another album review. I'm going to be reviewing this album by Cage. It's called Hell's Winter. Cage and MC. The first track on this is called Good Morning, which is a political conscious type track where he's talking about Wall Street, he talks about American politics, he talks about the freedom of speech, he talks about the New World Order and all them plans and the globalization, and really goes in at different elements. Very political, conscious type track. And he's saying good morning on the chorus. And he talks about growing up in the hood as well, and that aspect to it as well. Really good way to start the album. It has that rockish type beat to it as well. Then we have Too Heavy for Cherubs, which is where he goes in on his childhood. He talks about what happened when he was younger and how it affected him growing up, and how his feelings were about certain situations and how he struggled to overcome them barriers when he got older. And he's really expressing his true emotions about growing up. And it has goes into the next song, which has that war type feel to it, and he talks about the war, talks about a family member that fought in the war and some of the effects it had as well, and what happens in a war. And it's got that political and conscious as well, but it's also personal because someone he knew fought in the war, and he talks about growing up with someone who was in that environment. Really good song. And we have The Death of Chris Palco. This song is a good song as well, got a good beat to it, he rhymes hard, and he talks about his expression on the mic and how he's changed his ways and why certain things he was the way he is, sort of thing. Then we have Stripes, which is another personal track where he talks about his father and growing up and overcoming a lot of things he had to go through. I think he even mentioned on this track about being in a mental facility. Talks about his sister, and he talks about a lot of different things that happened throughout a young age. Then we have Shoot Frank, which is has two interpretations. Some say it's about him shooting heroin, because there are a lot of drug references on this track. He talks about giving up drugs and the drugs giving up on him, and he talks about his depression and what caused it with his upbringing. Talks about his stepfathers, and one of them was named Frank. That's probably why some interpret Shoot Frank as that as well. It could have two meanings, but because he does actually talk about both, does talk about heroin, and he also talks about one of his stepdads named Frank, so it could have any, only Cage will know, really. Then we have Sinister, is basically about a girl that he likes, who's crazy, who does self-harming, has a lot of depression, cuts themselves a lot, plays people, has a lot of emotional issues, and which has affected him, which affects her lifestyle and bad decision making, and she plays people off, and she's not the most sane, and that's why he likes her, because he can relate to her in a way, because he's sort of that way as well, a bit on the crazier side. That's what I got from that track. Then we have Perfect World, is detailing his perfect world, having a lot of money, getting a lot of views, people showing him love, what he would want. He's painting a picture of what would be perfect for him, basically, which is a good sentiment, really a good positive outlook on a lot of stuff that's on this album, which is nice to have. Then we have Suitable of a Breakup song, talks about him and his girlfriend that took drugs together, and they went out, did a lot of drugs and got mashed up, and she ends up dying, and he tells a personal story about that. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Then we have Paranoia, which is on the same tip, on that drug, talks about drugs and giving up, and the way he was, and having them same people in his circle sort of thing, really, and why he doesn't want to stay involved in that lifestyle anymore. Then we have Left It To Us, which is like a posse cut, where it's just braggadocious, bars being spat, just going in bar for bar. Really good song. Then we have Public Property, again another personal track, talks about his life, which goes into Lord Have Mercy, which is about someone who's committed a lot of crimes, done a lot of evil things, and then the police have caught up with him. Some might be shooting at him and all that, and he's saying Lord have mercy, praying for forgiveness basically of all the evil he's done in the world, and asking for forgiveness and saying have mercy and all that. Then it goes into Hell's Winter, the last track on this album, which he talks about being in a mental facility, talks about his life growing up, dad and stepdad saying how music was his saviour growing up because he was in a mental institution from a young age. And definitely a great personal album, definitely worth picking up. I think this is an album people should be listening to, should give a go, because it is good insight into his life and the way he is, especially if you're a Cage fan. This is the one. I think this is his best album. Movies for the Blind was good because you had tracks like Agent Orange, Suicidal Failure, Among the Sleep, a lot of good songs on there. Like Agent Orange, love that track, and I even like the song Suicidal Failure on Movies for the Blind. But this one gives more detail, and he still sticks true to himself and going in on the hip hop. Depart From Me is a very personal album as well. If you want to hear more personal stuff, that is a good album, maybe, but he does branch away from hip hop, so that might be, I'm more into the punk rock. So if you're not really into that, then I don't think that album would be for you. Then we have
that music makes you feel downright patriotic.
Another album, which his last album, which I didn't bother listening to. So yeah, so if you're a Cage fan, pick this up. I'd give this album a 9.5. I really dig this album. This is my favourite Cage album that I got. Really like this album.